way, but it does seem personal with those like handhelds. You're in the car with them. He's instructing his men to actually not go through with like certain suicides that they planned and all that. There seems to be like a personal level there.
Yeah. So like so that element is like especially like pounding with the drum line and the bass line and the handheld camera movements, the pulsing strings of it as he's getting ready in the morning to, getting his hat, his belt, his sword, like what is he going to do? I also love the brief flashes in the editing of, him as a pilot and him as a samurai and him as all of these, figures that he's kind of imagining.
And you also see the kendo mask, I believe, which is a story that happens. I think it's the third story they eventually tell when it's lining up with actually what he's doing currently in 1970.
Yeah, well, and also we're at the end of his point where he's just like, he up front, he's saying, like recently I've sensed an accumulation of many of these things that are inside of me that I can't express in writing. They aren't coming out. They are insufficient. So I have to find another form of expression, which rubs up against the thing he also says as a young boy in the memories when he was like, when I was very young, I learned two contradictory things. One, that words have the power to change the world. And two, the world itself has nothing to do with words and the body precedes language. And one of my favorite things is that it's almost like he's formulating his ideas, but he's almost like debating himself through time as well a little bit as we're, doing this very fluid, dreamy sense of cutting. Like I love the way we'll transition from that opening aspect where he is just like on his mission to go and perform his coup. And then all of a sudden he will like walk by a window and his like childhood self will like be in that window. And then we'll cut to like a simple reverse shot cut and a format change to black and white in the same set. And all of a sudden we're with him as a kid and we're doing we're suddenly with him as a fragile child who's being trapped inside by his sick, overprotective grandmother, who and forced to basically helplessly witness a world that he feels that he cannot change and kind of wishes that he could, which was another one of his like kind of like major sort of ideas. And his grandma also occasionally taking him to theater plays, which would get his interest in that, which would also be a reason why the fiction is depicted in that way, because he specifically liked plays because of the way it felt like they transformed reality and how like artificial they were. And I think at one point he even says that like, that guy is like a man dressed as a woman for the play. Yeah. Like that is like, a crazy thing, which was also just a tradition in Japanese theater for a long time as well.
Right. Yeah, totally. I also love the way that that's framed, where he's kind of looking into like the open door dressing room as the man is putting on the makeup and everything. And then it closes. It's kind of like this childhood intrigue of like, what did I just look at? But I can't help but keep thinking about it. And then it kind of leads into his, I guess, growing obsession with death and beauty, which is when he finds that, I don't know if it's a Greek painting in a book or what the origin is exactly.
The painting of Saint Sebastian, of the martyred Saint Sebastian.
Right. And so it's him kind of like his arms are up and he's kind of like on this tree in a way, and he's got these arrows sticking out of his ribs, but he's also, like physically built, and he seems to have this kind of intrigue of the male body being at its most physically capable and death at the same time. And this is kind of like the first thing I think that he sees as a child that kind of flicks that switch up.
And which is funny too, because there is actually another book of his called Confessions of a Mask from 1949, which is a story about a right-wing like imperial boy who doesn't fit into Japanese society, and he's being kept away from other boys due to a physical weakness and possibly being queer, and his isolation leading to fascinations with and fantasies of death and violence and sex. And one of the scenes that happens in that book, he is sexually aroused by the martyred painting of Saint Sebastian and masturbates to it.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, because he even says it in the in this film itself, where he's like he felt it in his loins when he looked at the picture. So
Yeah.
it
So
definitely sets
that
something in.
aspect is like represented in his life and in his book. And also a scene in that book is he exaggerates an illness at a World War II military draft out of cowardice, which we see the movie also depict, where he basically like fails a physical exam to be a kamikaze special attack pilot in World War II. Something he did really dream of being. The line in this film too that symbolizes that is the I wanted to explode like a rocket for the Emperor and light the sky for an instant and then disappear.
Oh, yeah, that's my other favorite line in this movie.
There's so many
yeah.
incredible lines, because some of them are his and some of them are Schrader kind of writing some narration for him, which is also being translated into Japanese by Leonard Schrader's wife as well, who helped them on the screenplay. Depending on which version you watch, because I've always watched the Japanese version, but apparently there's a Roy Scheider narrated version for American audiences, because this is still actually never played in Japan, this film, because it's so controversial.
Yeah, that's wild, especially to this day. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the Japanese right. They're actually really upset that some a vaguely sort of, possibly left or center leaning American filmmaker decided to make the film and, put things in the film that suggested that he might have been gay. And that offends them to the point where they basically threatened to do terrorist attacks on the film festivals in Japan that were going to play it.
Right. Yeah. It is crazy. You'd think that just after decades there would be more of an acceptance of just that it's an artistic look at this man. But I mean, I understand, it is a very touchy subject. There is a lot of history that they're diving into here and implications of it. So I understand.